Ladies and gentlemen, let's try to reason outside the box concerning religion, especially Christianity. We want to see whether there is this thing called original sin. We want to see whether original sin exists or original sin existed. So let's try to examine the Bible and see what the Bible is telling us. What sin did Adam and Eve commit? According to the contents of the Bible, the sin Adam and Eve committed is the breaking of God's commandment. The outcome was that their eyes opened and they realized they were naked. They began to know good and evil. Satan was cast, the ground was cast because of Adam, and Adam and Eve were transferred out of the garden to the earth to have dominion over everything. According to the Bible, God saw that they have become like Him, knowing good and evil, and decided to bar them from taking the tree of life, which will enable them to live forever. There are certain points to be noted here. In Genesis 3:9, it is God who grew the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and also the tree of life in the middle of the garden. B. Since God has knowledge of the future, He knew that Adam and Eve will eat from that tree. C. God had the power to restrain Adam and Eve to avoid harming them, but He decided to give them free will. D. In Genesis 3:2, it is stated that since Adam was like God, knowing good and evil, God feared that he will take the tree of life and live forever after eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In Genesis 3:4, God drove off Adam and Eve and kept them away from the tree of life, an action which He should have taken before Adam and Eve took the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What I mean by this is, if God would have barred them, at the initial stage, if God would have barred them from eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they wouldn't have done so. This is evidence of an erroneous man-made report. E. In Genesis 3:14-9, the serpent was cast, the woman was given a punishment which included pain in childbirth, the man was given a punishment involving hardships in life, the ground was also cast because of Adam, and in Genesis 3:24, both Adam and Eve were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. Note that Adam and Eve were not cast. God only removed them from the Garden of Eden to enable them to spend their lives as per the initial plan of Genesis 1:26, to have dominion over the earth and all that is therein. Adam and Eve did not die the day they ate from the forbidden tree as assured by Satan, but they changed from the state in which they were. Satan told them the truth, and God here is portrayed to have hidden the truth from them. A punishment for each was declared, and they were removed from the garden. However, from what we learn in Genesis 1:26, they were not meant to be in the garden forever, for they were to be on earth, to be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it, have dominion over everything on earth. The death mentioned by God is therefore their change of state, and they are deserving of God's punishment. Adam and Eve were not created to live forever on the basis of the following. 1. In Genesis 1:27, they were said to have been created in the image of God, and images are only temporary. 2. In Genesis 2:21, God made Adam to sleep, and a deep sleep, and took his rib from which Eve was created. This was to lessen the feeling of pain, and pain is a characteristic of death. The deep sleep is referred to as death in some Bible verses, like Matthew 9:24, Mark 5:39. The everlasting God never sleeps or slumbers. Psalm 121:4. And if Adam was created everlasting, he would not have been made to sleep, because sleep is death. Number 3, death existed before life. Except for God, Adam was dead before God gave him life. The objective behind the tree of knowledge is to enable the consumer acquire the knowledge of good and evil. Adam did not have this knowledge until he ate from the tree. Likewise, the objective behind the tree of life is to enable the one who eats it to live forever. This implies Adam and Eve were not able to live forever until they ate from the tree. This is why, according to the Bible, in Genesis 3:22, God feared that they will eat it and live forever. And in Genesis 3:24, they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. Number 5. Lastly, Adam and Eve were in body form and required nourishment from the fruits of the garden. In the absence of these, they would have physically died. Let's look at original sin and try to reason according to the Bible. Man did not become sinful because of Adam's sin. Man was created and given authority to have his own will, either to follow or to reject. Adam and Eve exercised this authority, but they exercised it without the knowledge of good and evil, and therefore they erred. They made a mistake. They went into the wrong. They broke God's commandment because they did not know it was evil to do so. They didn't have that knowledge that it was evil. Man, however, acquired this knowledge of good and evil after eating from the tree and was taken to his abode on earth to continue exercising his free will, but this time with full knowledge, with the full knowledge of good and evil. This is why at the end of it, man will be held accountable for his actions. Matthew 12:36. James 4:7 states, therefore to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is a sin. Sin did not enter the world through Adam. Sin existed even before Adam, for there were sinners referred to as fallen angels. We therefore have no other valid opinion except to conclude that the original sin is a fabrication by the clergy based on hearsay from unknown authors of the Gospels and the letters allegedly written by Paul to justify the crucifixion theory of Jesus. A pure monotheistic religion which teaches the oneness of God, the most merciful, oft forgiving, most loving, most powerful, King of kings, most knowledgeable, everlasting, has been adulterated by ambiguous statements, rendering it difficult to be understood clearly by the common man, contrary to the objectives of revelations from God. Alien religions emanated from a Jewish religion whose authority was apparently usurped by the Gentiles to create mysterious religions married to paganism. The belief that Adam and Eve committed a sin of such gravity as to surpass God's mercifulness and forgiveness and to necessitate the creation of a beloved Son who God sends on earth to be tormented and crucified to shed blood for the remission of the alleged inherited sin of mankind is something extremely alien. Yet there was no sin to be inherited, as God forgave Adam and Eve and allowed them to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and to have dominion over everything on earth. God has dominion over everything and has the power to bar Adam from eating from the forbidden tree in the same way he barred Adam from eating from the tree of life. Those who argue in favor of crucifixion, that it is God's plan, are oblivious of the fact that God is the best of the planners and cannot allow an action that will demand his own accursed death by crucifixion in whatever form he is, subhanallah, or his son's alleged son, an accursed death by crucifixion on the cross, as stated in Deuteronomy 21:23. In Galatians 3:13 it is stated, Christ has purchased our freedom from the curse of the law by becoming accursed for us, because cursed is everyone who is hung upon a tree. Those who argue in favor of crucifixion, that it is related to man's sin and God's love for man, ought to understand that God is not ignorant of the future. He is not powerless over the destructive effects of a tree he grew himself in the middle of the garden. They are guilty of accusing God of being unjust and unloving to an innocent, sinless person. They are also guilty of accusing God of being merciless and unforgiving, considering that it is within his capacity to forgive and to render the ill effects of the tree ineffective. Why not? If he helped men bring life to the dead by his command, helped Moses split the sea into two halves, helped him to turn a staff into a snake, saved Abraham by cooling down the fire he was thrown in, why not? God is the creator and has power over everything in heaven and earth. Sin is a wrong done against him, and forgiveness is by him, unconditional forgiveness through his mercy. These alien ideas have been injected into a formerly pure and unadulterated religion to a level that it requires another prophet and holy book to put it in its right perspective. The Quran is the book, and Muhammad is that prophet. The Quran unravels this paradox without any ambiguity with only a few verses. In Quran 2:30, Allah told the angels his intention of creating a vicegerent on earth, a representative on earth. In 2:35, Adam was instructed to keep off the harmful tree in the garden. In 7:20-21, Satan, not the serpent. The serpent is a snake. The Quran talks of of Satan, not the serpent. Satan misled them, saying if they ate, they will be like angels, or they will be among those who will live forever. This implies Adam and Eve were not meant to live forever. In chapter 7, verses 22-23, Allah reminded that He had warned them and told them that Satan is their enemy. Adam and Eve repented, and in chapter 2, verse 37, it is stated, "Then learned Adam from his Lord words of inspiration, and his Lord turned towards him, for he is oft returning most merciful." This means God forgave Adam. God forgave them and guided them to the right path. Quran chapter 20, verse 121-122. In chapter 7, verse 24, they were taken to the earth, their dwelling place and their means of livelihood for a time. They therefore have become God's vicegerents on earth, as was intended before they were created. Note that there is nothing like the original sin here. In Quran chapter 5, verse 75, we are informed that Jesus, the son of Mary, is only a prophet like any other prophet of God. In Quran chapter 3, verse 59, Jesus was created from dust like Adam. The Almighty God, Allah, said to him, "Be," and he was. Note the use of the word be. Be is God's words for creation. In Quran, chapter is like surah. When I say chapter, I mean surah. In surah, the 5th surah, verse 17, or in chapter 5, verse 17, it is stated that it is blasphemy to say that Jesus is God. In chapter 5, verse 73-74, it is stated that they blaspheme those who say God is one of three in Trinity. And lastly, in Quran chapter 4, verse 157, it is stated, "And because of their saying, we slew the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, Allah's messenger. They slew him not, nor crucified him, but it appeared so unto them. And lo, those who disagree concerning it are in doubt thereof. They have no knowledge of it save pursuit of conjecture. They slew him not for certain." The last book of Almighty God is very clear on this, that Jesus is not God or Son of God, but a prophet like any other. There is nothing like Trinity. There is no original sin, and Jesus was not killed or crucified. Is the New Testament reliable? The New Testament comprises of 27 books, and 24 out of them, that is 89%, are private letters addressed to individuals or selected group of people. There is evidence in Luke 1:1 and Corinthians 1 and 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 40 that the authors of the letters were not inspired by God. The author of Luke relied on investigations, and that of 1 Corinthians relied on his judgment and even doubted whether he had the Spirit. They were personal letters after all, and they required no inspiration from God. Out of the 24 private letters, about 19 of them, that is 70% of the New Testament books, are not from the 12 apostles initially chosen by Jesus. So the New Testament can be said to be only 30% reliable. You are from Adam, and by extension you have also acquired the knowledge of good and evil. Kindly enjoin good and forbid evil. Goodbye.